1 minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to Yaron Brook Show. This is Yaron's News Briefing, episode 10, and today is Wednesday, December 27th. We're about to wrap up 2017. Wow, time just seems to fly. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. The older you get, the faster it goes. Man, did this year go by fast. All right, we're going to spend Saturday... Radical Capitalist episode on Saturday talking about the year in review, so I'm going to skip that, although some of what I'm going to talk about today is relevant to kind of the year. And we're actually going to start with that. We're going to start with some good news for a change. And yeah, this is great news, not just good news, great news. In spite of everything bad, everything, all the problems that exist in our culture, in spite of everything Donald Trump said during the campaign, and there is no massive crime wave in America. Indeed, 2017 might go down as the safest year in terms of violent crime, possibly in American history, certainly since the 1950s. I mean, it's astounding. I want to give you some of the numbers because I was blown away by this. So this is New York. New York is seeing the lowest crime rates, the lowest violent crime rates, the crime rates that I think matter the most, almost ever, right? So in 1990, which was the peak of the worst crime wave in New York City, 2,245 people were killed in New York City. Just think about that. 2,245 people were killed, murdered in New York City in 1990 from all murderous causes, right? In 2017, 286. That is almost a 90% drop in murder rates in New York City. Almost a 90% drop in murders in New York City, which is truly mind-blowing, right? Really mind-blowing and pretty amazing. So it turns out that in spite of what we were told during the campaign, there is no carnage in the streets of America. Certainly no carnage in the streets of New York. Now, this includes, by the way, the terrorist attack that happened in New York City. So this includes, these horrific events like, like the what was it? The truck on Manhattan's bike lane on Halloween that included 8 people dying, and I think there was a bomb as well at some point on the east side, on the west side. Anyway, unbelievable numbers. If you look at broader crimes, murder, manslaughter, rape, assault, robbery, burglary, grand larceny, and car thefts. In the 1990, that total was over 500,000, 527,000 major felony crimes. More than 5,000 people were shot. Right? Shootings this year, only 774. Again, probably an 80% drop. And last year was a record low of 998, and now we've gone even lower to 774. For the first time in New York recorded history, at least, fewer than 1,000 people have been hurt by gunfire. Right? Again, astounding numbers. So we've gone all major felonies. We've gone from 527 to 101. So a 80% drop there. So if you look consistently across all violent crime rates, the only exception to that, it seems like it's rape. There was a big increase in women coming forward and reporting rape cases, but many of them were old cases. So many of these women were inspired by the whole Me Too campaign to actually report rapes that happened in the past, and that was the spike towards the end of this year since Weinstein in rape cases. But again, every other crime statistic in New York, violent crime statistic, is down. Now, this is not just a phenomena of New York. This is true across the country. So this is going to go down as from a murder rate perspective, one of the safest years, again, in recorded history. Certainly in the last, 50, 60, 70 years. Certainly since the 1950s. Let's see, we've got murder rates are down 5% in the largest 30 cities. And one of the astounding things is that murder rates in Chicago are down 15%. If you remember, Chicago was just out of control last year. And they're down this year 15% from last year. But even last year, which was perceived to be out of control, was way, way down from 1990 rates. So we're seeing across the board, the only areas where you're seeing upward ticks in murder rates are kind of mid-sized cities like Charlotte and Baltimore, which Charlotte saw a 55% increase in murders, and Baltimore saw an 11% increase in murders. But in the big 30 cities, we saw 5% decline in murder, and this is true across the board in terms of violent crime. One of the interesting things about New York in particular is this is in spite of the fact that there is a really leftist mayor in New York, de Blasio. Everybody was convinced when de Blasio came into office that crime was going to spike, go through the roof. And it hasn't. And, a lot of people are very bewildered by what's happened. This is also in spite of the fact that the police are using deadly force a lot less often. They're using more stun guns than regular guns. They've stopped or scaled back the practices of stopping and frisking people. So it's pretty amazing. Now, it really is pretty amazing, particularly in the case of New York. Now, is this because of Donald Trump? I mean, no. Again, this is a long-term trend. Crime rates have been declining in places like New York and other places since 1990. I mean, systematic trend. Last year was a little blip up, particularly in places like Chicago. But generally, the crime rates in the United States are increasingly lower and lower and lower and lower, particularly violent crime rates. And this, I'm including in this, right? This is including all those so-called sanctuary cities, all those cities that have illegal immigrants that's supposed to be murdering people left and right and is supposed to be so unbelievably violent. This includes all that. That includes all these cities, right? And I think New York is a sanctuary city. And here we are with these dramatic reductions in crime. Now, nobody really knows exactly why this is happening. Now, there is no as far as I can tell, and I did some research about this a couple of years ago because of the dramatic declines from the 90s, and this is a real mystery. Why is this happening? And some of it has to do with just smarter policing and more active police practices, not necessarily more violent police practices, but more active police practices. It has to do with demographics, fewer young people. There was a huge bubble of young people in the 1980s, but even that can't really explain it. Some people say it's the mass incarceration. We got millions of people behind bars, but most of those people are behind bars for nonviolent crimes, like drugs, related to drugs. And again, the statistics just don't bear out. The regressions, the analysis just doesn't bear out. The bottom line is nobody really knows. And it really is a good question of why, as so many negative things are happening in the culture, the one positive is that the crime rates, which are pretty astounding. And the other question is that given the decline of these crime rates, and this is a story that's been going on since 1990, why does nobody believe these crime rates? This is not fake news. This is real. Why does nobody believe them? Because when Donald Trump was on the campaign last year, in the Republican National Convention, and even in the inauguration address, all he could talk about was carnage in the streets, crime is out of control, people are dying left and right, and everybody believed him. And so I think it's interesting to ask the question, why is this, which is factual and real and actually there, and it's not true about illegal immigrants, the crackdown on illegal immigrants, because the fact is that these crime rates declined as illegal immigration was spiking, right? From 1990, illegal immigration kept accelerating through the 2000s up until about 2007. It peaked in 2007. Illegal immigration in the United States was peaking in 2007. And crime was declining throughout that entire period. And crime rates declined all the way, except for last year when they blimped up a little bit upwards, and now they're down again. So you cannot explain crackdown on illegal immigration on this. It doesn't make any statistical sense. Again, this is you buying into the Donald Trump story, which is false. The whole story of carnage in the streets, of crime rates in America, of illegal immigrants out of control, killing people left and right, is fake news. It's just fake news. Now, the other interesting aspect of this, which conservatives need to really think about, is the conservatives last year spent the whole year saying that Black Lives Matter and the attention to police shooting was only going to make police more tentative, and crime was going to go up because it was going to embolden the bad guys, and it was going to basically make the police weak and not assertive. Well, that's out the window. Crime rates are down, even though some places like New York, the policing is pretty soft because of de Blasio. So go figure. And of course, I know some of you, any good news, even if it's a long-term trend, is going to be attributed to Donald Trump, because you're in a box, you're in the tribal box. You've swallowed the blue pill, like whatever the pill is that makes you buy fake news, and all you can see is what Donald Trump tells you. You've lost the capacity to actually think for yourself and actually look at evidence. But anyway, this is fascinating. It's interesting. I'm sure Donald Trump will take credit for it, but he has nothing to do with this because, again, it's a long-term trend. And the really interesting question, which I think researchers and people are going to have to evaluate, is, why is this happening? And it truly is interesting. All right. Somebody says he's tired of fake news when a simpler term exists as lies. Yes, I mean, that's the problem with fake news. Some people lie, some people are biased, and some people are mistaken. And those three are not the same. When Donald Trump says that there's carnage in the streets and crime rates out of control and illegal immigrants are responsible for all of this, those are lies. Those are lies. So, and that's what, the numbers have shown, and what the numbers continue to show. All right. Let's see. We've got a caller. I'm wondering if he's calling about this particular topic. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hey, Yaron's Michael.
Michael again. Hey, Michael. What's up?
I wanted to challenge you on what you just said,
Yeah.
because although you're right that crime has been going down throughout the years,
Yep.
this comes from the NYPD Comp Stat 2.0 portal, where you can check the crime rates week by week, year by year,
Yep.
and compare them for everything. The only thing that's went down is robbery by 1%, burglaries went down 19%, and grand larcenies went down 2%, with a national average week by week of 914 a week.
Yeah, because
in greater New York City
you
area.
don't have 2017 data there. You got 2016 data.
No, I got 2017. They go by week, so you can check week by week, or you can check.
So what do you have? What do you have as homicides?
Homicide is up 25%.
What's the number?
Last year was an average of 4 a week, and now it's 5 a week this year.
What's the
in New York
number? What's the
City.
number?
What do you mean?
What's the actual? What's the total number of homicides this year?
Okay, so if you go week by week, 5, so about 200 and something.
Yeah, so it's 286 is the number I've got. And what was the number last year?
Last year, let me have to do some math here.
Yeah, but they don't give an actual total number?
Well, they do, but I have to reboot the portal to go through year by year. I was just looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly the lowest number, up until now was in 2014, 333. And the number of 286 is the lowest since we have any kind of records. It's lower than last year. And if you add to that the fact that now it's not the end of the year yet, so we still got a few days. So a few people are going to die in the next few days.
Right.
But it's certainly going to be below 333, which my source says is the lowest number since records were kept.
Well,
But I'll investigate further, and if it turns out you're right and I'm wrong, I will admit that fact on air in public and apologize. All right?
Well, I will send you the link.
Send me the link so I can check it out.
But I wanted to say something else.
Yep.
Because you might be right on this.
There is that possibility.
Pretty empirical, definitely. I mean, if your place is saying one thing and mine's saying the other, that happens all the time.
Yep.
But it's been pretty much empirically shown, not empirically maybe, but there's a trend that kind of goes back to what Milton Friedman used to say: is you can't have open borders and a welfare state because people from all over the world will come and use the welfare, and the immigrant population uses welfare about 20 times more than the native population. Now I know that.
Say that again. Say that again. Say that again.
The immigrant population.
Yeah.
Now it varies from study to study, but I think the average is about 12 to 20 times more they use.
Okay.
Like
Send me that link because that is a bogus number.
Oh, okay.
Send me that link. That link I want to see because.
I got a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I know they use it more. It might not be that much more.
It's nowhere near that much more. It's not even close to that much more. Oh wait. Go ahead.
Now my question is, they're not the immigrants aren't doing anything. They have every right to do that because
that's what the laws are set up. Yeah.
Exactly. But isn't it? I know you're going to say yes to this, but it's immoral to have such a big welfare state so more people can be. I know you don't believe in the social contract, but isn't there a more violation of if a system is set up for the native population and it's disproportionately being taken advantage of by immigrants, if not by illegal means? Because like in Dearborn, Michigan, they have these illegal. I don't know how they phrase it, but they use this kind of set up to where they can lie about it, and there's like big clubs about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about Dearborn, Michigan, but let me just say this. Look, the welfare system is an immoral system. It is immoral. I don't care who uses it. It's immoral. It's wrong. It's bad it's wrong because it takes money for some people, and it's bad because it gives money to other people. and that destroys their self-esteem and their ability to flourish and be successful.
I agree.
So the welfare state is an immoral system. We should fight that immoral system. Now, is it more immoral for a immigrant, legal or illegal? And if you want me to separate this out, I'd be happy to use welfare than it is for an American citizen? I don't see why. It's immoral. Period. It's a human being who is taking advantage of a system that we have set up voluntarily, and they're using legal means to do it. What makes one thing more immoral than the other? On the contrary, in my view, I actually view it the other way around. Somebody born in America, with all the opportunities that America provides, with all the advantages that you have being an American citizen, who then purposefully, and not all of them, some of them, by no fault of their own, land up poor and really can't make it. But so many of them don't make it and don't try and just accept welfare and just accept that they're part of a welfare system and just embrace welfare. That to me is the epitome of immorality and failure and so on. Versus some immigrant, Guatemalan. I don't know why I'm picking on Guatemalan, but maybe because they moved their embassy to Jerusalem following Trump now. Some Guatemalan who is born poor with no opportunities and nothing in a murderous society, and he struggles and he has the audacity and the self-esteem and the courage to travel and trek through thousands of miles of desert and crosses a border and comes and gets some help and ultimately, hopefully works because, hey, after you've trekked for 2,000 miles, you're not doing it to get some pathetic welfare check. You're doing it to actually become, somebody's gardener or to become somebody's, some worker in some factory or to pick strawberries or to do actual productive work. I respect that person 1,000 times more than I do the American who lands up on welfare. Right. That's far less immoral to me. So no, I say you fight welfare, you fight its immorality, you fight what's bad about it, and you fix the immigration system. Our immigration system is broken. I'm the first to admit that immigration is broken. Yeah, there are too many illegal immigrants because we don't allow for enough legal immigrants. If we made it easy to come here legally, fewer people would be illegal. And that's the solution to illegal immigration. Just like, in the days of the Prohibition, there were a lot of illegal drinkers. The solution to illegal drinking wasn't to put everybody who's ever drunk any alcohol in jail. The solution to illegal drinking was to make drinking legal and to solve the problem. I'm an illegal driver. I violate the speed laws all the time. You can call me an illegal driver all you want. That doesn't taint, it doesn't make me change what I'm going to do. So the whole thing is I find the whole way in which people talk about illegal immigrants and welfare just distasteful. I mean, if we really cared, then we'd expand legal immigration. We'd allow people to come here who really wanted to work. We'd ban. I'm fine with having a ban on welfare for all immigrants for the first 10 years. Fine. I have no problem with that. Let's fight for those things. But let's not ban immigration because they consume. Let's ban Americans from receiving welfare. That'd be great.
Right. That'd be awesome.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate you calling in.
I just wanted to ask you,
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me something. All right, we got another caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Good evening, Dr. Brook. This is Skyler.
Hey, Skyler. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I just wanted to know see if you agree with the broken windows theory, if that could possibly be something that can be attributed to the lower crime rates.
I mean, I do to some extent. Although, again, I think de Blasio is moving away from the broken windows. I think, he's got the same chief of police. He brought back to New York the chief of police who initiated the broken windows policy which was the 1990s, and just explain to people what broken windows policy was. It's not the same as the broken window fallacy in economics. It's a broken window policing, and that is the idea that if you police small little nuisance crimes like graffiti, like breaking windows, like people jumping into intersections and wiping your window, if you police those things, if you make neighborhoods cleaner and neighborhoods respecting of the law, even on the little things, then the big things also go away. And I think there's a certain element of truth there. But again, the research that I've seen, it doesn't explain it all. It just doesn't explain it all. And I think that we still do not have a full explanation of what is exactly going on with crime rates. I wish I could explain it. I wish we did have an explanation, but we don't. It would be fascinating to know what it is. I think if you combine all the things, the broken window, the changing demographics, the increased quality and standard of living even among the poor, and I think there's a lot of fallacy in this idea that earnings and standard of living have not risen. And this, by the way, I'll say this again. I say this almost every show because I like to pound this point home. Nothing has benefited poor Americans more than China. Chinese imported goods, Walmart. And if you think about the increase in standard of living and quality of life among poor people because of cheaper goods and as a consequence, a higher standard of living, I think maybe if you combine all those things, then maybe you get a beginning of an explanation. I'm not sure that captures everything, though. It might still leave some things unexplained. But yeah, thanks for bringing up the broken window policing strategy, which was used in New York in 1990, starting in 1990, and was successful, incredibly successful in doing that. Let me just say again about China. China has not taken anybody's job away. What's taken jobs away in the United States is automation. I mean, every economic study, every single one shows that 90% of the manufacturing jobs in the United States were taken by automation. And indeed, globalization, trade with Mexico, trade with Canada, trade with China has lowered the cost of goods, has increased jobs dramatically, and indeed, I believe, saved the U.S. economy. And you can see statistic after statistic showing this saved the U.S. economy from inflation and from much, much slower economic growth. The economic growth we have seen since 1990 is, I think, to a large extent attributable to trade with China, trade with Mexico, NAFTA, all of the trade deals that are being cut, which are not great because we still have tariffs, but 1,000 times better than what existed before these trade deals happened. And poor people have just become better off as a consequences. And the idea that they've taken jobs, I mean, is bizarre. With when trade was at a maximum, the employment participation rate in 2007 was an all-time high. And it has declined since then, not because of trade with China, but because of government regulations, Obama regulations, and government intervention in the economy. It has nothing to do with China. But again, people can only see the world through the prism of what Donald Trump has told them. And it's stunning to me, I'll talk about this on Saturday, how ignorant people have become of facts and of economics as a result of Donald Trump's candidacy and presidency. But anyway, that's me on my thing. All right, thanks, Skylar. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. We've got one other caller. I think is that Austin? I don't know what number that is. Is that an Austin, Texas number? Hi, you're on your own Brook Show.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Brook. This is Adam from California.
From California, 512. Is that the Bay Area?
No, that's Austin, but it's a cell phone.
Oh, okay, so you live in California. All right. So I didn't get it wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Go ahead.
I have a philosophy question. Is that all right?
All right. This is not the philosophy section, but go ahead. Since you're on the line.
Okay, thanks. So Rand has this idea that the individual's life is the ultimate value and the standard of value. And she offers several arguments for that, one of which is that if you look at other organisms, animals, bacteria, that they have to take action to sustain their life, and that's kind of their fundamental mode of being. But it seems to me, at least, that in some instances, life is subservient to genetic propagation. There are certain insects where that's more fundamental, where they have to die as part of their reproductive process.
Yep.
So why should life get a standard value rather than genetic propagation or something like that?
Well, I mean, even if that is true of certain animals, it's not true of all animals, and it's not true of plants, for example, and it's not true of a lot of things where clearly life for them is the standard. And then if you then bring in human beings, then who are, I think, far less determined by their genes than any other species out there, to the extent we're determined at all by our genes. Why should genetic propagation be the standard? The standard is me, my life. Life is the only standard one could contemplate for a non-deterministic, genetically deterministic being. The thing is with those insects is, they're determined by their genes, and they might have been determined by their genes in a way that propagates the genetic makeup. We're not determined by our genes, and therefore I think that's out the window. And indeed, most higher animals, even though they are determined by their genes, they're not determined by their genes to propagate. They're determined by their genes, from the evidence we can see, to survive. So yes, you can find here and there species where you find the individual sacrificing, if you will, for the genetic group. But okay, so there are exceptions to this rule within the animal kingdom, but that doesn't change the rule. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I mean, it might not be satisfying, but that's the best I got.
So the problem I have with that is you could never, evolution seems to act on human beings as well as animals.
Yeah, but evolution did this amazing thing on human beings. It gave us free will. So what evolution did with human beings is it gave us reason and free will. It gave us a new type of consciousness, which allows us to self-program. And therefore, this is the genius of what is a human being. We don't need to have everything coded because we can code it ourselves. We can self-program. So even if it would be true that what you say, that in all animal species, and that's not what you said, you just gave an example of a few insects. If all animal species, the genetic code is what mattered and they were propagating the genes, it would still be true that human beings are different, because human beings have a new capacity, which is self-programming, and therefore their life attains a standard which is different than the standard of an insect because of this unique consciousness that they actually have. But of course, it's not even true of the animal kingdom. It's only true out of a few exceptions that you mentioned. Most animals, and when you observe them, and plants, for example, are there to propagate their life. That, the plant is not worried about other plants' ability to seek water. It goes and gets water, and if it sucks up the water and some other plant dies, so be it. It's not concerned about the other plant's genetic makeup. It's only concerned about its own genetic makeup. It's only concerned, in other words, it's only concerned about its own life. So, but again, I think even if everything you say was true of all animals, human beings are different, and evolution has given us, in a way we don't completely understand, this ability to program ourselves, the ability to have free will and to have reason, and that is an evolutionary shift, and therefore a moral it has implications in morality when you're talking about human beings.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Brook. I'll
Sure.
have to think about it.
Think about it. Thanks. All right, we got one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hi, this is Nathan.
Hey, Nathan. How's it going?
Hey, good. I love your show, by the way.
Thank you. I
got
appreciate
a question
that.
for you.
Yep.
You're welcome. A follow-up from your comments yesterday on relationships, if
Yep.
that's okay.
Sure.
So I was thinking about what you're saying in relation to, sort of Rand's theory of emotions. So for example, like we experience happiness so that we continue to pursue the things that make us happy, right? So it's kind of like we're, I don't want to say hardwired or whatever, but we're sort of, we have these emotions to sort of cause us to act in a certain way or avoid certain things, right?
Yep.
So, do you have any thoughts on? So, yesterday we were talking about how we have this, we get this great joy from having relationships with people that share our values and reflect our values.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on why we might get great pleasure from that? Does that serve some sort of like life-serving purpose, the way that other value, the way that the other emotions do? It's kind of a psychology question, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. Why do we does it serve our life that we benefit, that we enjoy being from around?
Yeah, because
people?
I mean, I'm going to take a shot at it. It's again a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but let me take a shot at it. I think it's similar to the reason we need art. Life is complicated. It's very complex. Conceptual knowledge, value hierarchies, that's hard work. And we can make mistakes and we have to fix them. And in life generally for human beings is a very hard, very exhausting, it's a difficult challenge. It's not easy to get it all lined up and to get it all right. And we need, I think, as human beings, we need a certain affirmation of those values at some level, and we get that from art. It's the reason I think human beings need art. It's not an optional thing. I think if you to live a happy, flourishing, successful life, you need that projection back of your values. And I think even more so, it's in friendship and it's in love. You need that sense of affirmation of your values. And it's not affirmation in the second-handed way, oh, I'm not sure, I need you to tell me that I'm okay. It's knowing it and then seeing it. Oh, wow, yes, that's what it's all about. And there's something psychological about us that we respond to that, and we need that. And I think it provides us with energy to keep going. And I think it's because of how difficult it is to figure out the world around us and to solve problems and to engage it with reality. And we need those, I guess affirmation is the best way. I also think it's a reflection of the trader principle in some deep way. And again, I think this is, I'm not going to formulate this right. I haven't thought about it enough, but there's something here that is paralleling the trader principle in the material world. So in the material world, to get better and better, we need to trade with people. In a sense, there's a certain level of specialization, and we get rewards for our specialization. We then can use those rewards, the money, to then trade with other people who benefit us and make our life better in all those realms. I think there's a sense in which something is going on like that at a spiritual level in friendship and in love. But I'm not sure I can articulate it right now in terms of how it works exactly. But I think a certain way there is a division of labor. You don't actually love people who are exactly like you. It's the fact that they are different, that they somehow, that it's in the same direction, but they respond a little differently to things. That they find things important that you might not find important. You find things important, but that you understand why they find the things that they find important. So it's not that it's irrational, it's just different. And those differences, I think, serve to make life more interesting and make life richer, and not just in the material realm, but also in the spiritual realm, and also just make life easier. So I don't know. Let me stop there a second, but because I don't know if any of that made sense.
That's I think there's a lot there that makes sense. It gives me at least something to think about. So thanks.
Sure. No, I think these are interesting questions that I think, and I don't know that there's a lot of work being done on friendship and relationships within the Objectivist movement in terms of what they represent. I mean, in the common world out there, everybody just shrugs and said, we're a social animal. And there's a sense in which that's true. We benefit enormously from other people. But that doesn't explain anything, right? It's just an observation. Yeah, we benefit from other people, but why do we benefit? How do we benefit? And we understand it in the material world because we've learned economics and we get the trader principle in the material world. I think work needs to be done in explaining it and understanding it in the spiritual world, in the sense of friendship and love.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks. Do you have
Sure.
time for one more question?
Sure.
Economics one. It's a lot easier for you this time. So I remember a week or two ago you were commenting on the tax cuts in the just passed,
Yep.
and you said something to the fact that if they didn't go with cuts in spending, that they're really not doing much good in the long run because we're going to have to pay for those eventually.
Yeah.
So you weren't as excited about them as some people. I've heard people make the argument that it can be the case that tax cuts can actually yield a greater government revenue. You know, the whole Laffer curve thing, depending where you are on that. Is it possible that that it actually the tax cuts could actually pay for themselves by generating more revenue?
Yeah, if the tax cuts are the right tax cuts, and if you do it right, and I think that to some extent the corporate tax cuts will yield that. But the personal income tax are just not structured right. So if you really wanted to do that, you would cut the top marginal rate dramatically, which is what Reagan did originally in 1981, I think it was, in his first tax cuts. They cut that top marginal rate significantly. And that creates, that leaves more money in the hands of the so-called rich. And they use their money to invest, which creates economic activity later on, which actually results in greater revenue. But it's not true that if you, for example, cut the lowest marginal income tax rate, which George Bush did, which a lot of people have done, I think even Bill Clinton did, it's not true that that automatically will pay for itself. It's the top tax brackets that really have economic oomph to them in a sense of creating economic activity, because in the top tax brackets, the money that the people get is not consumed, it is saved, and saving generates more economic activity than consumption. And
what if somebody made the argument that,
and what you're doing is you're replacing government consumption with private savings, and that's far superior.
What if somebody made the argument that a middle or lower class tax cut, those people save money and then they spend it, and then that ends up in the hands of bigger companies, which does that not end up ending up?
Look, I'm always for a tax cut. I mean, anybody who pays less tax is good for them. But if the question is, how do you make the tax cut so that it maximizes revenue, which I hate because I don't want to maximize revenue. The Laffer curve works on the highest tax brackets. And one of the reasons Laffer makes arguments is that, one, they save more, and it's what you do initially with that first dollars. It's not what happens in the chain, because all money in the chain ultimately lands up somewhere other than where it started. But where does it start? If it starts an investment, it has more long-term impact. But the second aspect of it is that if you take somebody who's being taxed at 50% and you lower their tax to 25%, Laffer would argue they are now going to work more and therefore produce more and create more, and therefore there'll be more to tax. And you're taxing now more at 25 than you were taxing at 50. They're going to spend less money and time to try to evade taxes. They're less likely to open an account in Panama. They're less likely to do what they can to reduce their tax load. So, whereas if you're at 15%, the difference between 15% and 12%, it's not going to change how much you work. The amount you make when you work is not that big. So even if you generate more income, the amount of total taxes that the government's going to generate is not going to grow. Okay. So, so this tax cut, there's no question, will to some extent increase economic activity and therefore increase some tax rates, increase some tax revenue. But it's nowhere near what it could be, and it's still true. And it won't make up for the entire loss of revenue. And it's still true that they haven't cut spending. And as long as you don't cut spending, it's a mess. And what really hurts the economy is not so much taxes. It's the sucking money out of the private economy. And if you don't suck it out through taxes, you suck it out by issuing bonds, by borrowing it or by printing it. And it's spending, because what the government is doing when it spends all this money is consumption. And 90% of it is wasteful consumption, because it's not consumption on anything the government is any good at doing. And as a consequence, it's unbelievably wasteful. So if you really want to generate economic growth, you need to cut spending dramatically, and at the same time cut borrowing and cut taxes. But without cutting spending, long term the impact is marginal.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. That's interesting. Appreciate everything.
Sure. My pleasure. All right, we're going to take one last question. Well, maybe one more on top of that. If you press a 1 to tell me you want to ask a question. If you don't press 1, I don't know you're asking a question. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hello. I got 2 little quick questions.
Okay, good.
It's Michael again.
Hey, oh, Michael again. All right. You're monopolizing the show, Michael. Go ahead.
I'm trying. Get my market share up.
There you go.
Is there anything that you can, I know that when we had our long conversation, you showed a lot of disdain for people like Dostoevsky and stuff like that, and people of that ilk.
Well, let me correct that before you say that. I think Dostoevsky is one of the greatest novelists in human history. His novels are striking, they're brilliant. His characterizations, the dramatic impact of them. I mean, I'm not putting Dostoevsky down in terms of his quality as a novelist. When I'm putting him down, what I don't respect is his philosophy.
Right, and that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
What the question was, is there anything intellectual about maybe not necessarily his philosophy, but any kind of ideas from his worldview that just like little components that you respect or you found insightful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or anything worth taking away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly the big takeaway from Dostoevsky is the existence of free will and the importance of morality, even though his moral code is completely opposite of mine. So the existence of free will is a big one. I mean, he dramatizes free will in ways that no other author, maybe other than Victor Hugo, succeeds in doing in Ayn Rand. The inner workings of the human mind and the fact that you have choices and that bad choices lead to bad outcomes. And now I don't agree with what he considers bad choices, but in the identification of free will as crucial and important to human life, that is massive. That blows up that's, I have a huge amount of respect for. So yeah, there's certain positives in his philosophy, if you can call that.
Okay. And secondly, I had another one, but it's not very interesting.
Yep, good.
Secondly, who do you think is the most influential economist in your mind? Like an actual economist. Who do you think's the most
today, alive today?
The most insightful, ever that you've ever read? The most inspiring, the one you took.
Oh, the most inspiring, the one who should be the most influential would be Ludwig von Mises. Ludwig von Mises is I think the most important, the greatest economist in history. He beats Milton Friedman hands down. I mean, Milton Friedman's good, but Mises is a step above. I think Hayek as an economist is brilliant. I think if you go back and you read Menger, Karl Menger from the Austrian school is brilliant. But I think the best by far is Ludwig von Mises. I mean, he's a true genius.
Yeah, I really like von Mises. I'm surprised you said that. I thought you were going to say somebody I didn't know of.
No. It's Mises. It's Mises. I've not invented some new economic theory that nobody knows. I'm trying to apply my best understanding of people like Mises.
Yeah, he's definitely a revelation.
Yep.
I like Milton myself. I think he's more practical, but if it was a pure economic philosophy, I would probably go with von Mises as well.
Yeah, I mean Milton Friedman was maybe if not the best, one of the best articulators of economic principles. Although some of economic principles he articulates are wrong, but in terms of he is the best. He is the best articulator of economic principles. He's brilliant at that. The other guy who's excellent articulating economic principles is Henry Hazlitt, who used to write for the New York Times in the 30s and 40s, and wrote Economics in One Lesson, which is one of the great books in economics, particularly for beginners. So those would be my choices. All right.
Okay. All
Great.
right.
Thanks,
I
Michael.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. Let me remind everybody to don't forget before year end to go to patreon.com and make a small contribution or a large contribution, whatever you guys want, to the Yaron Brook Show to make it possible for us to grow and expand and spend some money on real marketing and increase our production values, which we will be doing here over time. Thank you, all of you, for those of you who have already supported the show. I really appreciate it. And, have a great new year if I don't talk to you again. But there is another episode of this show of news briefings tomorrow, same time. Well, it'll be at 6 o'clock, not 6:30 Pacific time. And then on Saturday will be my year in review. And we will also have a living objectivism. I think you'll find a really fun, interesting living objectivism episode coming out probably over the weekend. So, hey, see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.